Ella's still not with us. Nobody been on the ground trying to find her. We trying to find Ella. We're not stopping until we find Ella. I'm not stopping until I find Ella. One was last seen in Iowa. Her truck was last seen in Dallas, so we're just gonna start in Iowa and go from there. We don't even have the exact location. The cops didn't give it to us. So we also need that.
One person traveled all the way from Houston, Texas to help in the family search.
I rode the bus all night, but I'm here.
The family says they need more help to find Ella.
There's a lot of people that went missing in Lafayette, and they had way more help than we getting with Ella. They had airplanes in the sky, dogs on the ground, and they had boats in the water. We don't have nobody. We pulled up, we asked everybody for help.
The family says they hope to find Ella safe.
We're praying that she can be found safely and returned to her kids and her family safely.
Tonight, we finally know what happened to missing Lafayette woman Ella Goodie. This after suspect Brandon Francisco pled guilty to federal charges. Francisco has also agreed to spend the rest of his life in prison. In return, the government has agreed not to seek the death penalty. I combed through the federal documents recounting Ella's last movements and moments alive with Francisco.
We don't have a body. We don't have anything.
November 13th, 2024. After nearly 3 years of waiting, praying, and searching, a family finally heard the words they've been desperate for. Brandon Francisco stood in federal court and admitted it. He confessed to carjacking Ella Goodie, shooting her multiple times, and disposing of her body before driving off in her vehicle. The mandatory sentence? Life in prison. But here's what's keeping this family up at night. Where is she? Where did he leave her? And why won't he tell them? Hey everyone, before we dive deeper into this heartbreaking case, if you're new to Crimelab Report, please hit that like button, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss an update on cases like these. Your support helps us bring awareness to stories that deserve to be heard. So let me take you back to who Ella Goodie really was, because she was so much more than just a headline. Ella grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana, and from the time she was just a young girl, she had to grow up fast. Her mother was handicapped, and Ella became her caretaker. Think about that for a second. While most kids were worried about homework and friends, Ella was making sure her mom was okay, making sure her younger brother was looked after. She didn't get to just be a kid. She had responsibilities that would crush most adults. Her best friend Felicia met her over 22 years ago when they were both teenagers in a detention home for troubled youth. Felicia told reporters that Ella had it rougher than most people. But here's the thing that stood out. No matter what Ella was going through, no matter how hard life got, she always had a good spirit. Felicia said to know Ella was to love her. And Ella's brother Arthur, he put it perfectly when he said if you knew Ella, that was enough. She'd give you the shirt off her back. She'd help you if she had it. By March 2022, Ella was 33 years old, living in Scott, Louisiana, and she was a mother to 2 teenage kids, ages 13 and 14. She was trying to make ends meet like so many of us do. Her best friend Felicia suggested she start driving for Lyft because Ella needed work. At first, Ella didn't even want to do it. She didn't want strangers in her car. But Felicia talked her into it, and you know what? Ella actually started enjoying it. She was meeting people, making some money, and things seemed to be looking up. But here's where things get tricky. The rideshare apps like Uber and Lyft, they take a pretty big cut of what drivers make. So Ella started doing what a lot of drivers do. She started taking private rides, customers who would pay her directly without going through the app. She could make more money that way. And that decision, that one decision to try to earn a little extra for her kids, would cost her everything. Brandon Francisco, that's the name you need to remember. Ella had given him rides before. Multiple times. Actually, she knew him. She felt comfortable with him. And on March 9th, 2022, when he asked her to drive him from Louisiana to Houston, Texas, she said yes. She told her brother around noon that day that she was taking someone to Texas, and they were stopping for gas. Everything seemed fine. She told her 2 teenagers that she'd be driving someone to Houston and would be back home the next day. But can I ask you something? Have you ever gotten into a car with someone you thought you knew, someone you trusted, only to realize too late that you didn't really know them at all? That's exactly what happened to Ella. Because the Brandon Francisco she thought she knew, the passenger she'd driven before, he wasn't who she thought he was. Not even close. Traffic cameras caught her vehicle heading into Texas on Interstate 10. But then, about 12 hours later, those same traffic cameras caught something strange. Her car was coming back into Louisiana. But here's the problem. Ella wasn't driving it. The next day, her car showed up in North Dallas, Texas. And then weeks later, it was found all the way up in St. Joseph, Missouri, over 900 miles away from where Ella was last seen. Her family reported her missing on March 11th, just 2 days after she left. They knew something was wrong. Ella wasn't the type to just disappear. She wasn't the type to leave her kids without a word. When her phone last pinged near the Iowa, Louisiana exit, near the Calcasieu and Jeff Davis parish line, authorities searched that area. They searched and searched, but they found nothing. No Ella, no clues, nothing. And here's where this case gets even more disturbing. Remember I told you Ella felt comfortable with Brandon Francisco because she'd driven him before? Well, let me tell you who this man really was, and I promise you, this is going to make your blood boil. Brandon Francisco wasn't just some regular passenger. This man had a history of violence that should have kept him locked up for good. Back in 2009, he was convicted of attempted murder against his own wife. His wife. Let that sink in for a moment. He served 10 years for that. Then, on Christmas Eve 2018, just 4 years before Ella disappeared, he was involved in a shooting in Cheneyville, Louisiana. He was charged with attempted second-degree murder again, conspiracy to commit murder, armed robbery, and obstruction of justice. Now, here's what I need you to understand. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't a mistake. This was a pattern. A dangerous, violent pattern. And somehow, this man was still out on the streets in March 2022. How does that happen? How does someone with 2 attempted murder charges keep getting released back into society? Ella's cousin Jessica said it best when she told reporters that the system didn't lock this man up. They kept letting him out even though he was clearly a danger to everyone around him. And you know what the worst part is? On March 9th, the exact same day Ella went missing, Brandon Francisco had an active warrant out for his arrest. He had failed to appear in court in Rapides Parish. So not only was he a violent offender, he was actively running from the law when Ella picked him up. Can you imagine what was going through his mind that day? He knew he was wanted. He knew the walls were closing in. And Ella, sweet Ella who just wanted to make some extra money for her kids, she had no idea she was driving a desperate man with nothing to lose. So what happened during that drive to Houston? We may never know the full details, but what we do know is chilling. At some point during that trip, Brandon Francisco pulled out a 9mm handgun. He shot Ella multiple times. Multiple times, guys. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of panic. This was execution. And after he killed her, he disposed of her body somewhere, somehow, and then he just kept driving. He drove her car like nothing happened. Think about the coldness of that. Think about the level of evil it takes to take someone's life. Someone who trusted you. Someone who was just trying to help you get where you needed to go, and then just drive away in their car like you're going to get away with it. 2 weeks after Ella disappeared, on March 25th, 2022, police finally caught up with Brandon Francisco. But where do you think they found him? St. Joseph, Missouri. That's over 900 miles away from Louisiana. And guess what was with him? Ella's 2012 Audi Q5. He was arrested on that outstanding warrant from Rapides Parish and for unlawful possession of a firearm. When he went before a Missouri judge on March 26, that judge took one look at his record and said he's a danger to the community and no conditions of release will secure the community's safety. Finally, someone was paying attention. But here's what breaks my heart. While Brandon Francisco was sitting in a jail cell in Missouri, Ella's family was back in Louisiana desperately searching for answers. Her kids were waiting for their mom to come home. Her brother Authrey was calling her phone over and over, hoping she'd pick up. Her cousins were organizing search parties, driving to Texas, driving to Lake Charles, searching everywhere they could think of. On April 19th, 2022, over a month after she vanished, law enforcement searched the area near where her phone last pinged. They brought in teams, They brought in equipment. They searched that stretch of Interstate 10 near the Calcasieu and Jeff Davis Parish line, and they found nothing. Absolutely nothing. By May 3rd, 2022, Louisiana State Police made it official. This was no longer a missing person case. Based on investigative techniques and witness statements, they were now treating this as a homicide investigation. Ella's family had been holding on to hope, praying she was alive somewhere, maybe hurt, maybe scared, but alive. And now the police were telling them what they feared most. Ella was gone. But without a body, without any physical evidence, what could they do? Brandon Francisco wasn't talking. He wasn't cooperating. He wasn't giving them anything. And so the case just sat there. Months turned into a year. Then 2 years. Ella's family kept searching. They kept posting on social media. They kept begging anyone with information to come forward. Her cousin, Danasha, said they didn't care what posts people saw. Just keep sharing, keep spreading awareness, because so many people still didn't know who Ella was. And all this time, where was Brandon Francisco? He was already in prison, but not for what he did to Ella. In October 2022, he pleaded guilty to that 2018 attempted murder charge and was sentenced to 30 years at Dixon Correctional Institute. 30 years without the possibility of parole. He was locked up, but Ella's family still had no answers, no closure, no justice for what he did to their loved one. Now, let me tell you about November 21st, 2024. Almost 3 years after Ella vanished, a federal grand jury in Lafayette returned an indictment. Finally, Brandon Francisco was being charged with what he really did: carjacking resulting in death, using a firearm during the commission of a crime of violence, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and flight to avoid prosecution. The walls were finally closing in on him, and there was nowhere left to run. But then came November 13th, 2024, and this is where we started the story. Brandon Francisco, now 39 years old, stood in federal court and did something that shocked everyone. He pleaded guilty. No trial. No fighting the charges. He admitted to everything. He admitted to carjacking Ella. He admitted to shooting her multiple times. He admitted to disposing of her body and fleeing with her vehicle. The sentence is mandatory life in prison, and his official sentencing is set for January 27th, 2026. You'd think this would bring Ella's family some peace, right? You'd think finally getting justice would help them start to heal. But here's the thing that's tearing them apart. Brandon Francisco confessed to taking her life, but he won't tell them where she is. He won't tell them what he did with her body. He won't give them the one thing they need most: the chance to bring Ella home. Ella's cousin Deisha said when she heard the news about the guilty plea, she thought she'd be strong. She thought this was what they'd been waiting for. But when she actually heard it, when she heard the indictment and all the details, it just broke her down even more. Because the question that keeps haunting her, the question that keeps all of them up at night is, where is she? Renee Tra, another one of Ella's cousins, made a direct plea to Brandon Francisco. She said, "Brandon, say something, anything, for her children's sake. If you're going to be selfish about what you did to her, at least tell us where she is. The damage is already done. She's gone. Just say it. Just tell us so we can find her and start the healing process." Think about what Ella's 2 teenage kids are going through right now. They're older now, almost adults themselves. They've spent their formative years without their mother. They don't even have a place to visit. No grave to bring flowers to. No spot where they can sit and feel close to her. How do you move forward from that? How do you find closure when the person who has all the answers refuses to speak? Jessica, Ella's cousin, said something that really stuck with me. She said they're going to continue saying she is, not she was, because they don't have her body. The police might call it a homicide investigation, but until they find Ella, until they can lay her to rest properly, they're not going to accept that finality. And can you blame them? The family has been searching on foot themselves. Tammy Washington, another cousin, said they went on searches by themselves, just 4 of them, driving to Texas, Lake Charles, searching everywhere they could think of, for people trying to cover hundreds of miles of highway, hoping against hope they'd find something, anything that would lead them to Ella. You know what this case really makes me think about? It makes me think about trust. Ella trusted Brandon Francisco. She'd driven him before. She thought she knew him. But how well do we really know anyone? How many times do we get into situations with people we think are safe, only to find out too late that we were wrong? Ella was just trying to provide for her children. She was doing what millions of gig workers do every single day, and it cost her everything. But here's the deeper question I want you to think about. What makes someone like Brandon Francisco? What happens in a person's life that turns them into someone who can look another human being in the eye, someone who trusted them, and take their life without a second thought? And then, after confessing, after knowing he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison anyway, what kind of person still refuses to tell a grieving family where their loved one is? What level of cruelty does that take? Ella's story isn't just about one woman who disappeared. It's about a system that failed to protect her. It's about a violent offender who was given chance after chance when he shouldn't have been on the streets at all. It's about a family that's been searching for almost 3 years and still doesn't have the basic human dignity of being able to bury their loved one. And it's about 2 kids who lost their mother because she was just trying to make ends meet. So I want to ask you something, and I really want you to think about this. If you were in Brandon Francisco's position, knowing you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison no matter what, would you tell the family where the body is? Would you give them that one small mercy? Or is there something so broken inside some people that even basic human compassion is beyond their reach? If this case affected you the way it affected me, please do me a favor. Share this video. Share Ella's story, police or the FBI. This family deserves closure. Those kids deserve to be able to visit their mother's final resting place. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future updates on this case and others like it. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Should Brandon Francisco be pressured to reveal where Ella's body is? What would you say to him if you had the chance? Let's keep this conversation going, because cases like Ella's need to stay in the public eye. That's how we get justice. That's how we get answers. And that's how we make sure Ella Goodie's name is never forgotten.